All right, John's so huggable. Oh. That was awesome. Thanks, John. Hey, Tom Comet here, and it is that time of year again for the annual inspection of Romeo Bravo Romeo, a time that can strike dread into an aircraft owner's heart and wallet sometimes, but we try not to think that way. We try to think positive about annual inspections. We try to think about all the good things that the annual inspection means, and that's what we're here to talk about today. I'm at Brant Aero, my favorite aircraft maintenance organization, and we're with the owner of Brant Aero, Blaine Field. Thanks for taking some time to
my pleasure.
To chat about annuals. I didn't mean to frame it in a bad way. Annuals, I embrace my annual, but it does cause me a little bit of stress. Yes. I have to admit, because I don't know what you guys are going to find.
Yeah.
I want you to find it, but I don't want it to cost too much money.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I'm an aircraft owner too, so I know exactly what you're going through.
Right.
And I can remember a time actually on my own airplane when I needed a cylinder removed because it was a little bit low, but I was really afraid my camshaft was maybe on its way out. So I told the mechanic, I said, take the cylinder off, but you're not allowed to look at the camshaft. Only I can look at the camshaft, because then I would make the decision whether I might fly it an extra 100 hours or something. But
and then you looked and it was fine?
I looked, it was a 1976 camshaft, and it's still in perfect condition.
I can't believe how long these planes last. Like, seriously, this plane's 1977. I look at some of the stuff. I mean, yeah, some of the stuff looks like it's a 1977. You look at some of the other stuff, and it's just immaculate. Like, it's amazing, especially if a plane is stored inside, it's taken care of well. I address, the issues as they come up. And these things can last forever. Not forever, but they can last a long time. And I guess that's the idea.
And that's the whole point of the annual inspection, is that you're bringing it in, and you have a choice. You've got to fix things that are unairworthy, because that's a safety issue. But then there's all the other issues, like potentially preventative maintenance things that if you want to invest a little additional money, maybe it's going to save you money down the road. And then there's things that are cosmetic or improvements to the overall enjoyment of your airplane. So you really have the three layers. So when you come in for your annual, typically, especially in your case, we are not just going in and doing the minimum. We're doing the minimum, obviously, but then you're adding on and saying, well, I want this fixed this year, I want this fixed this year. So we're trying to slowly improve the aircraft so that when you do go to sell it, it's worth what you're trying to get for it, not, less $25,000 in maintenance that you ignored for 10 years.
Yeah, no, I see that a lot. I see people who own certified aircraft, or maybe a twin like myself, and there's different ways to manage it. You can be someone who's always sort of staying behind the power curve, like I like to say, like you're mushing the aircraft maintenance. You're always just barely squeaking by. You're almost, not keeping it together.
Yeah.
And then there's other folks, like I try to be in this group myself, where you're up on the top of it. You're staying on the tippy top. You're keeping everything, snag free. I mean, you're never snag free. You have a 1977 twin engine aircraft. There will never be no snags on that plane. But I know what they are, and I decide what's important and what's not. I have a list, and then you're right. When I come in for my annual, we go through that list and we try to address as many things as possible. Because let's face it, you've already got everything open. We're halfway there.
Yeah,
the time's been spent. Maybe there's a spring, maybe there's a this, maybe there's a that, maybe there's a engine. Hopefully not.
No, you think you're good on your engines?
We did that already.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm less fearful of the annual than I definitely used to be. Like, I remember when we used to come in, I've had this plane since 2017,
Yep.
So I've had it a while now. When I first came in, it was painful.
Yes, it was.
The first few years with this aircraft was painful. Now we're up on step.
But at the time you knew. When you bought it, you knew that you were going to buy a project that was going to need some. It had actually been well looked after, but it just hadn't had much of the preventative done, much of the cosmetics done, and so you've been picking up a little bit of that every single year. So it always seems like it
had been well looked after, but it hadn't been flown. And then the way this plane was managed before me was sort of completely opposite than this context that we have here with you and Brant Aero. It was the owner, and it was a single mechanic used to do the annual. I remember, because they were doing one when I bought the plane that came with a quote-unquote fresh annual.
Yes.
And it was the old guy owner and the old guy mechanic, and the same mechanic who'd done the annual for 20 years. And it was all, you'll see in the logbook, it's all handwritten, and they were doing the same thing every year. They were changing the oil, they were doing the ADs, they were checking what they needed to check, but they weren't really digging deep with it.
Right.
And I ended up paying the price for that a little bit. And I think there's definitely a benefit to being part of an organization like this and getting my work done here. I think every year that my annual's been done, you've had a different person working on this plane or a different group of people working on the plane, because you have, like, how many AMEs do you have here?
We have about 20.
About 20.
But
so it's a different set of eyes. So there's different eyes looking at my plane, finding potentially different issues. Because, yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of money on my plane, but I also don't want my plane to fall out of the sky for some unknown reason, or to leave me stranded at some faraway airfield when I'm on a job or potentially doing some work or needing to get somewhere.
So just a little bit of a correction to what you said. So yes, we do tend to move people around on different airplanes over the years, primarily because new eyes, they look different places, they look for different things, they each have different experiences. So you always get, over a period of years, like we've been dealing with you for 7 or 8 years now, we know your airplane inside and out. That's a true story.
Yeah.
Now, one person may not know your airplane inside and out. But what we do is, when we're working on a chronic snag, or we're chasing down a particular system, there are people here that have expertises, and those people always come back to that.
Right.
So as John's always been, we had heating issues on the back engine after it was installed. We've had some heating issues on the front, I should say, overheating issues, or potentially overheating issues. And John has been consistently, and that way there's this, he knows what's been done. Mm-hmm. It's very methodical.
We're not redoing it.
We're not going to repeat work. We're not going to keep, stopping just before we find the problem. So it is a bit of a balance. It takes a little bit of management. We're a busy shop, so maybe John's busy. So obviously it's not just John, it can be other people, but so we try to find a balance there.
I like it when John works on my plane. John makes me feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
Something about that guy. He's
Yes.
a big,
Yes.
just want to hug him.
Yeah. Yeah. I have people like that in all aspects of the business. There's people that's like, this is a job for Colin, or this
Some
is
of them
a
are
job for
huggable, and
Goons.
some of them are more huggable, and some of them are. John's very huggable.
Yes. John will be happy to hear that. I'm going to tell him to steer clear of you.
That's fine, John. We got to get John a hug. So yeah, this time around, I mean, there was nothing major going into it. We had that rock chip in the rear propeller that we've addressed. There's this sort of ongoing thing where I find my front engine runs a little hot. Skymasters, Skymasters are renowned for hot running rear engines.
Yes.
I have never had a hot running rear engine. I've only ever had a hot running front engine, which is completely counterintuitive to Skymasters. So while we've got her opened up, we're looking at that. Like, so what are
and of course we have looked at a lot of it, but just point out a few things. First of all, there's always the injectors, and we clean them at every annual, so they've been cleaned during this annual. Because if you get an injector that even has a little bit of a piece of grit in it or something, it can really screw up, and it'll lean out slightly, that one cylinder, and it'll raise the temperature. We see an overall temperature rise on this engine, which by the way is well below the maximum. It's just that you're wanting to keep it under 400, because that's the new advice out there, is keep your engine under 400. So you're having to shallow out your climbs and so on. So obviously we look very closely at the baffling. Now this engine's actually partially disassembled for the annual, so this isn't supposed to be like this, but it will get put back together. But we do look for things like sometimes when the cowling gets put on, the baffling will actually get folded backwards instead of folded forwards like this. So what happens is, instead of the air being deflected to come up and go through the cylinders, it can actually escape coming around past there.
And we saw that. Like, we had the old, I don't think there's any of the old crappy baffling. There was the old Kevlar stuff on here, and we replaced it all. I don't know what this stuff is, but we replaced it with all this.
Well, this is like a silicone impregnated. Right. It's more durable. It's a very difficult airplane to put this kind of baffling on. You can see it's been repaired here. Mm-hmm. But it is doing its job, and we actually make sure, again, this is something on, not only do you have certain people that are experts in certain areas, but you have certain airplanes that have idiosyncrasies. And we know that the cowlings on a 337, if they're not put on carefully, you can trap this backwards instead of forwards. So that's one of the tips and tricks on certain airplanes, is you have to come in and inspect and make sure that once you put the cowling on it, that you put it on properly.
And that's something I check, like, especially when it comes back from an annual. And that's a good point too, while we're talking about it, is being involved in your annual, coming in, talking to the folks that are doing your annual, learning about stuff like, the baffle being put facing the right way as opposed to being stuck backwards potentially, and being able to look for stuff like that. Like while the plane's open, learn as much about it as you can. Get in there, get your hands dirty, undo some screws, act like you're part of the
it's all part of your day. You're going to do a DI anyway. You might as well have certain things that you check on your airplane because it's unique to your airplane. So having said that, your engine's only got about 300 hours on it since new. I know you've flown it exactly per the book because we've talked about it. I know you have a full-blown engine monitor, so you can see every temperature of every cylinder and your EGTs and everything. So, and anytime you've ever had any issue where one's not indicating consistently or it's been changing, then we investigate it. So, as far as the temperature on the engine, I'm not sure what we're going to find yet. I think the baffles are fine, the injectors are fine, the engine's young. It could be an indication error. So now we're chasing, maybe something. And I've got a great story for this. I had a Cirrus that when we bought it for the customer, cylinder number 3 was always reading hot. Mm-hmm. And I was leafing back through the logbooks and I saw that they had checked the probe, they had even changed a cylinder. Oof. And when I flew in it for the pre-purchase, it was high, but it wasn't too high. It was just maybe 35 degrees higher than every other cylinder, so it was odd. So when we got the airplane back, we did everything normal. We checked the baffling, we checked the fuel injectors, we did everything. And for the next 2 years, the owner would fly it, and every time he'd fly it, he would say, if you can figure out why that one is running hot. And so we would investigate, and I would always reassure him that it's not too hot, like it's still within, but it is odd, especially since it was a new cylinder. The long story short, we ended up changing the probe, we changed the wire, we changed the GDU, the actual electronic part. Just could not get rid of this temperature. We swapped probes and harnesses so we could verify that it was number 3 cylinder. Long story short, it turned out that it had had one probe replaced several times. We had done it as well, but the other 5 probes had never been replaced. When he came in for his new engine, we put the whole new system onto his new engine and number 3 was hot. We were shocked. It was impossible. So we had one that was intermittent on another cylinder, the EGT, or the cylinder head temp. So we changed that probe, and lo and behold, we had 2 cylinders that were warmer than the other 4.
So the EDU was calibrated to the...
No, the other 4 probes were changed, and everything was bang on. Oh. It turned out it was actually 5 bad probes to the 1 good probe.
Wow.
I mean, that's a book. I mean, because we went through, and the pain and suffering that my client went through every iteration until we found it.
Well, it's not even every iteration, it's every flight when you're watching those temps and you're thinking, you can't help but imagine in the back of your head. I know how much these engines cost. When I see hot cylinders, I start seeing dollar signs just floating out of my bank account.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I come back and you tell me, as long as you're below 400 or around 400, you're fine. It's engineered to run like that. Yes, I get it. But it just makes me sweat.
Well, especially if you have comparators.
Yeah.
So if you have a friend, and I know you have lots of friends with 337s, and they all say, "Oh, my front engine's colder than the back engine."
But they all bitch about hot running back rear engines,
exactly.
and then I'm like all snooty about that.
So and actually, it's things like that, frankly, Tom, that I do enjoy. I love when there's a problem that no one else can seem to find, and then we eventually find it. Mm-hmm. And I like to pat myself on the back or my team on the back and say, "Oh, we're so smart." But then I think, man, that took us 5 tries. Maybe we should have been able to do it in 2, but ultimately some owners just live with it.
Yeah.
And don't even report it anymore.
Yeah.
Like you said, don't you have one of these probes that every now and then is giving you a little...
Yeah, there's an exhaust gas temperature on number 5, I think. Yeah. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. I just live with it. Yeah. The only time I don't like it, I know it's fine. I know it's an indication error. It's not anything to do with the engine error. So I live with it, but I don't like it when I have passengers or when we're doing one of these videos.
Right.
Like I don't like it that one of my EGTs is jumping up and down, and it just looks like it's just not perfect.
Yes.
But apart from that, I'm not concerned.
Well, we have a lot of customers with twin engine airplanes that expect that all needles should be exactly the same or all temperatures. And one of the new phenomenon with all the electronics being installed is that instead of having a needle, which, if you take off and you're at 2,650 RPM and it goes to 2,652, no big deal.
Yeah,
now you get like blink, blink, red, 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 and it throws everybody off. So now we're trying to get 2,652 down to 2,649 so that we can get the red to disappear. And it's piston engines, they're not like turbine engines. Not everything always matches. So you may have cylinders that are slightly different. And really what you're looking for is changes. You know,
Right.
is one getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and one getting colder and colder and stuff like that. So fun stuff.
Fun stuff. Anyway, so nothing major under here. What else can we
You
talk
got
about?
really lucky this annual.
Yeah, you
the
were
only thing
saying-
we talked about was your boots, obviously.
Yeah, so the boots have been something happened at some point, and there was some contaminants somehow ended up on this. I mean, that's my theory, is something contaminated this section of this boot, because this is way worse than any other section of any of the boots anywhere, and it's not great. I think maybe at some point I didn't regularly enough treat it with the UV protection.
No.
Maybe?
No, I think this damage was long done before you even bought the airplane.
And it
These
just
are
has
no
come
doubt,
out over time.
These are no doubt 47 years old.
Yeah.
And by the time you got it 7 years ago, the UV damage was done. It hadn't been protected, it had been left outside. What you're seeing here is you're just seeing the continuing deterioration of that external rubber.
Remarkably, the boots function, they work. I've tested them. I've blown the boots in icing situations and they work fine.
Yeah.
I do fly IFR. Boots are of a concern to me because I sometimes stray into ice accidentally, like all real IFR pilots are apt to do from time to time. So the boots are an important safety item for me, you know, to get out of ice. It's something I want to address. You're telling me I don't need to deal with it on this annual. I would like to defer it. I would like to potentially defer it to before winter.
Yeah.
Sometime before winter, I do want to address the boots. We need to, I think we've done a quote on it before. I'm sure that quote just goes up every year like everything else.
Unfortunately, yeah, especially the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yes, so obviously in Canada, CARS 625 Appendix B and C minimum maintenance requirements, they've designated the owner is responsible for the maintenance of his airplane. So ultimately, I take my direction from the owner. Now, as a person that's been doing this for almost 40 years, I do give recommendations. And so my recommendation is that don't go near any ice because
It's not a Fikey aircraft. I'm not allowed to go into ice.
right. So, and if you do get in ice, you're going to want to get out of ice because you never know when this is going to let go, and then you don't have a boot on this side.
And then I have asymmetric
So then you have
boots.
yeah, there's all kinds of
No,
horror stories that we can all come up with. But ultimately, you can defer it by pulling your circuit breaker and putting a placard. But since you're the only pilot in your airplane, you deal with it as you see fit, and then pick it up sometime in the August or September.
Yeah.
Because obviously you can get ice at altitude
You
pretty
can.
much any time. But
You can, but we're less likely this time of year. So I'm going to defer the boots. I'm also going to put a shout out to BF Goodrich. We're going to be replacing the boots on TomAir's Skymaster come August or September. Looking for some sponsorship opportunities. No? Maybe not. Anyway, it's worth a try.
he's so huggable.
I'm huggable. All right, what else do we got?
Well, just we've had this one chronic issue with this
Oh,
this
God.
little flapper down here that's on a spring, and it
This
seems like
drives
every
me
year
nuts.
it comes in and the spring's either broken or missing. But
So the Skymaster obviously has retractable gear. When the gear goes back, this little flap here has a spring on it, and it's supposed to flap shut over this port where the gear is. And it broke at one point. I didn't even notice it. The only time it was noticed, actually, I was with John Thompson, we were air to air.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, your little port thing is open. And he took a picture of it, and I'm like, and then I brought it in, and you guys said you'd fix it, and we did fix it.
Yep.
And then the spring broke again immediately.
yes,
And it's how much is that spring? $100 or something, probably?
actually, it's not even that much. It's hard to believe anything's under $100 on an airplane these days, but I think that one's only like $20.
So we should just buy 5 of them.
Yeah. You can change them after every flight. I don't know. It could be pilot error. I'm not sure yet. So we'll.
You're probably losing 2 knots of airspeed there.
Yeah, that's right.
It does flap sometimes. Every now and then you hear that.
Yeah. Well,
the
you
wind
don't
will
want
catch
that.
it
You
or
don't want your
something.
passengers wondering what's happening outside
No.
either, right?
No, and I want a nice, when we're clean, the airplane's clean configuration. I want it to be clean.
Yes.
This is probably costing me 0.005 knots of airspeed.
Yeah. Over 15
God
years, it pays for itself in fuel. So.
So there's dumb things like that. I like the dumb cheap things.
Yeah, actually, there just wasn't a lot on your airplane this year. I mean, and it's it's a testament to the fact that you've asked us to fix things every year as we find them. But generally, we had this rock or something damage the prop here.
Yeah, it was
And
kind of
we-
a scratch.
We
Like,
were really
was a
worried
weird
that it
one.
might have to go into the prop shop, but
Yeah.
in investigating the limits, it was only about a third of the maximum limit. So they just blended it out, touched it up, and away you go.
Happiness. So speaking of props, though, we are coming up. I think it's 2 years till my prop annual.
Right.
And that's
You mean your tenure?
my 10-year prop. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So that's something that sort of makes my heart flutter a little bit.
Well, interestingly, a lot of your viewers are probably from the United States, and they don't have to worry about 10-year overhauls down in the States.
So what's the deal there? They've got,
Transport Canada has decided that it needs to be taken apart for corrosion inspection every 10 years. And I think a few years ago they were talking about alleviating it, but smarter people than I in the background came up with the fact that no, it should stay. And we do find props with some corrosion when they go into the shop, and sometimes we don't. It really depends on how much they're flown. So in your case, you fly a lot.
I fly a lot, but I don't fly in I've been to Florida once. I don't park next to the ocean.
Most of the corrosion's internally, so it wouldn't be it's not environmental from sitting by the ocean. It's more just inactivity, and the grease might settle and it exposes the metal inside, and then you get a little pitting, and then, corrosion's a big thing.
What else do they do during the prop ban? I thought they x-rayed it or something.
Yeah, they take it all completely apart. They strip the blades. They're going to do NDT, like non-destructive testing, make sure everything's okay. They look for pitting and corrosion, and then they put it back together, reseal. They check all the dimensions to make sure they statically balance it. Comes back looking like a brand new with a
But it'll
new
still have
sticker.
our little ding in there and all the stuff that
No,
we
they,
fixed over the
they
years.
probably would take. They would probably mill this down. Like they can obviously they have the
So there's
tooling
extra
and the equipment.
material on
Oh
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very seldom do I find props actually don't pass, but every now and then you get a phone call that says, airplane behind us here, all 6 blades rejected. So we ended up buying them brand new props. Not a happy day.
So what's my prop annual going to cost me in 2 years? Because I got to start putting money aside in the little prop annual mason jar.
you get away a little bit because you don't have de-ice boots.
On the back.
On the back,
I have
I'm on the
heat.
front. So this one's cheaper than the front by about probably $800 or $900, and I wouldn't be surprised. It's somewhere in the. I'm just throwing out numbers. I don't know for sure. $6,500
Per prop.
per prop. Maybe that one's going to be a little more, and they always find a little bit of something. Like there's always this part or that part that's not included that's extra.
All right, we
And,
need,
you know, a
we need a
little
prop sponsorship too. We're looking for a prop sponsor
Well,
2 years from now.
we deal with Hope Propeller in Toronto exclusively. We haven't really gone anywhere else in as many years as I can remember. It's always a fair shake. Obviously, you want to put it in the back of a truck and drive it to the United States. You can tend to save a little bit of money. But I've also had, there's a big gap between, the quality of the shops because there's so many of them down there. So in the end.
So what brand is this propeller?
This is a
So I don't even know this stuff.
Macaulay.
Macaulay.
I don't even know.
Because the
You
props
asked me-
actually
you-
have the
you
prop.
asked me a hard question.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Because there's actually logbooks. Like each of these propellers has its own logbook.
Every propeller guy watching this video is going, how does he not know what propeller's on that 337?
You're not the prop expert at Brant Aero. There's that other guy, Joe.
There's no big sticker right here that says what it is.
Sorry, we can delete that. So the other cool thing I like about the annual inspection is it's a chance to, I actually open up some of this stuff myself sometimes, usually because I'm trying to put GoPro mounts on my plane, which I'm probably not supposed to do.
Well, you only put them on with stickies, right?
I put them on with stickies.
Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah. But it's a chance to look inside and see the bits. We're seeing the control cables. We're seeing the fact that inside this plane, the zinc chromate, is that what it's called? The zinc chromate paint, which I love the fact that this plane has that.
Yeah.
Only the French Skymasters have the zinc chromate. The American ones don't. It's so clean. Like you could eat out of here. If I dropped some food in here, I'd be happy to pull it out. Actually, but then you guys found that mouse nest in there, didn't you?
Yeah, it's
Was that on
funny.
this side or that side?
I don't remember. Yeah, it was this side, I think.
Okay, maybe I won't eat out of this
So
side.
the funny part is that mouse came from underneath your floor. And he managed to get all the way up that strut and down this boom and lay in here a little bit of his nest. Fortunately, no damage, no moisture was with it.
So that's a good example of a dumb little thing that gets found during the annual. But I mean, who's to say a mouse nest in the wrong place on an aircraft couldn't cause a fire if it was in the engine somewhere?
That's right.
I mean, that's a dumb thing, but that could be a big thing in the air. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of back to the annual idea, right? Like that's why we're looking at it once a year
Once a year.
because I remember this is many, many years ago, but we had a Lark Commander, so that's a single engine, almost like a 172. It was Rockwell Commander's version.
I know one of those. Yeah, I know that plane.
And I got to do the annual. I think I may not even have been an engineer yet, and I just happened to be going under the wing, and I kind of bumped my head, and it felt weird. So I turned around and looked, and I thought it looks like a hole. Like you could see the white paint, but you could see it had been thinned out by years of erosion. So I started looking at it, and I put my finger up and went poof, right through the skin. And when we went in there, there was mice nests for like a section of skin this big. Like they had been in there for years, and it literally had just eaten through the aluminum to the point where boop, 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 we just put our fingers through it. Oh. And somehow it had been missed in annuals year after year after year. And primarily because there was no inspection panel at that location. So you'd have to go from in through the interior and
you
look.
happened to bump your head up.
I just happened to bump my head
Because you were
up.
tall.
Yeah.
I mean, if you weren't tall, you probably wouldn't
Yeah, that's right.
found that. All right, one more spot back here. We found that the rear strobe and marker light?
No, nav light.
Nav light, sorry. The rear strobe nav light combo, both of them were out, aren't they?
Yes, which I think they've determined is there's a little bit of rot going on in here. So the question becomes, is this thing economically feasible to replace because it's the old flash tube style?
Yeah, because the LEDs are a lot cheaper now.
The problem with the LEDs is that, not the problem, they're fantastic, don't get me wrong, but to do the upgrade, you have power packs that drive this. So there's a power pack that can be removed, saves some weight, and but there's probably a rewire that might be required in some cases. So
see, now my heart's going fluttered, and
yeah, and of
I'm
course,
seeing dollar signs flying out of my wallet.
Yeah,
again.
exactly. So, well, to put LED on an airplane like this all around is going to be over $5,000 to $6,000 probably.
Yeah, I know.
But
I priced it out.
It's pretty amazing when you see your airplane taxiing down at night and you see that tail strobe go off. It just blow your mind how bright LED is. So.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I know John's got all the fancy LEDs on his, and I see him come in, and I don't get to see my plane land, but I see it on video, and he's lit up.
Yeah.
Like just lit up. And
You can just enhance that, can't you? And you're just
a little bit of tweaking
get
in
Matt
post.
to edit that in.
Yeah.
Make it brighter.
Make my plane brighter.
Make it brighter
Matt.
than John's.
All right, what else? You got any other great stories about finding things on people's annuals that would have been not great if you hadn't?
Well, I think probably every month we find something that's kind of, And what we tend to do in our shop is that we haul everybody over. And
so
we
show
bring them over and we go, check this out. Like, that's, either somebody never inspected there or this is something to look out for in the future. We do the same thing if there's an error in the shop. So if someone makes an error in the shop, we bring everybody over and say, this is what the error was. We're not pointing fingers and making fun of anybody. We're just saying, this is how stuff, can happen. So, and I hope that it makes our guys better engineers, more cognizant of, complacency is a thing in our industry. You're talking about having one person look after your airplane year after year. That there's still guys out there that do that today, and in some cases they're really good at it. I mean, don't get me wrong, but then there's other people out there that after a while it's like, I know this plane. But I don't know about you, but as I get older, what seemed like a year or two ago tends to be 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. So as an engineer looking after the same airplane might be like, I just checked that a couple years ago, but really it was 9 years ago you checked it. So, that mouse nest sits there and rots for 6 months because why open the boom? There's never anything in it, right? So, so that's something we're always trying to do in the shop is bring those things to light and switch people around on airplanes so we can find that kind of thing.
That's the other thing I appreciate about the work that gets done at Brant Aero is the detailed logbook entries. Like your logbook entries tend to be, I've only had one other place where logbook entries were done, but yours tend to be very detailed. I can understand them, and it's like it's printed out with, like it's not handwritten in someone's weird handwriting, and it's great. Mm-hmm. And you tend to, like I know you're obviously reviewing my logs all the time. Like I'll come in and say, I need to do this, and you're like, we did that, or we did that. Like you almost know my airplane from a logbook perspective. You do know it better than I do, mm-hmm. which I should maybe study my logbooks a little bit more. But I definitely appreciate that. And you're also, your way of tracking snags too, like your whole computer system thing that you've got going on here, where you can track snags over time, defer, not defer, this is what was done, this is what we tried last time. So again, like what you said, we're not wasting time redoing the same things over and over again.
Yeah, we're fortunate we have a lot of software here that has been designed, it was originally designed by my uncle Pat and his son Kevin. and their daughter and my cousin as well, and Jennifer. And what they did was they actually designed software that made sense for what we do here, which is if I want to search something, if I want to say, when's the last time I changed your left tire, I can actually search it and it'll pop up and show me when I just changed your last tire and things like that. So that's very handy. The fact that we're in your tech logs, we do take, it used to be in the old days, you handed the tech logs back and you would give the entries tucked in and let the owner put them in the logbook because it takes more time. And I think maybe it's a little OCD, maybe it's just what I would want on my own airplane is when I open up a logbook that I'm gonna buy an airplane, and I see the same signature, the same thing, 100-hour annual signed off, 100-hour annual signed off, no snags listed, no history, I immediately get very, very worried that what am I going to find if I take this thing apart in detail and look at it. So the more detail we put in the log entry, the more we share with the, future buyers of your airplane, the more value you get. It's as simple as that. Other than that,
because the logbook adds value. I mean, a good logbook adds huge value.
I think the logbook is huge value.
Yeah. I mean, this plane had very good logbooks going in. Paul mentioned that. That was one of the selling features of it. But I think the logbooks have improved. If anything, they've improved since I've been here.
Yeah, and we're always looking for innovative ways to increase the value. So we were just discussing this the other day. I'm looking for people, instead of coming in and saying, oh, I had to expense a whole bunch of money on my airplane, it's I had to invest money in my airplane. So when we're doing things, we're trying to enhance the value of the airplane. When it's time for you to sell it, and you take it for a pre-purchase inspection, everybody's going to always find something because it's very subjective. But they're not going to find anything that's going to cost you a lot of money because we've done our job. We've given them excellent records. We've shown them that everything's up to date. So hopefully your airplane sale goes through. And of course, Brant Aero's name in the book adds value. That's what we're selling here is our name in the book adds value. Not that we do everything perfect all the time because we don't. But
nobody does.
No,
it's impossible. Perfection is impossible. Right. But we can constantly achieve Kaizen.
Yeah.
Kaizen is the constant minuscule improvements over time.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely the mantra here is continuous improvement, period.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, when am I done? When can I fly? Sounds like we're
I understand we're just waiting for this. We got to put a few things back together, so I think by Thursday we'll...
I got to go to Thunder Bay and
pull it out and wash it and you can take it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, my
Thanks
pleasure.
for doing a great job. Appreciate you working on my plane.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, another one of the things I love about Brant Aero, check this out. They got these signs everywhere. Blaine did this like business training thing, and they've got these like motivational business signs everywhere. What AMO, play like a champion today, and giant writing on a sign at the shop. So all the people that work there can go, yeah, I'm a champion. I'm gonna play like a champion. I'm gonna make Tom's plane the best, the safest, the most awesome Skymaster that can be. Play like a champion today.